So, Gerrie, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership. But before we walk into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in the Free State. Went to school in the Free State. I did my national defense 2 years in the Free State, and then I came to Stellenbosch. So I studied at Stellenbosch. I then started my career at Stellenbosch Farmers Winery, the old Stellenbosch Farmers Winery. And I worked for Stellenbosch Farmers Winery for 13 years. I was 4 years in the financial planning division, and then 5 years I was running the old KwaZulu-Natal, and 4 years the old Transvaal, which is Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, and Northwest. And then Michiel asked me to join Capitec and build a bank. And yeah, since 2000, I've been part of the Capitec story. So in very short, that's basically where I'm coming from, and that's my background.
Right. And Gerrie, can you tell us, in your early days, what was your dream career?
I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never wanted to be a CEO or work for a salary. So my passion was always being an entrepreneur and run my own business. And I think that was why when Michiel contacted me, what was very appealing is the fact that we were building something from new. And if you look at Capitec, going against the 4 traditional banks, building a new model, taking the market on from that perspective, that was for me exciting. And if I look at what we're doing still today, building retail out, bringing in new products, the whole business bank, the whole insurance side. So, I'm still living that dream of being an entrepreneur, think differently about it, and building a culture of innovation and let's go and do it attitude.
Yeah, well, I mean, Capitec is a leader in so many ways, in customer experience, in innovation, in culture. Can you tell us who inspires you, or what inspires you? What are your sources of inspiration?
Well, I always believe it's you need to understand what your passion is, and whatever your passion is, you need to live that passion. If your passion is to play a guitar, go out and go and do it. If your passion is to build companies, go and do it. But find your passion and live your passion, because you work 10 and 12 hours a day, you sleep 7, 8, then it's not a hell of a lot of time left. So you really need to enjoy your working side, and you can only really enjoy your working side if it's in line with your passion. Because if it's not in line with your passion, you're not going to enjoy it, because you need to go and do something great. You can only do something great if you really got a passion for it. And then you must develop yourself, and developing yourself is, I think it's a big portion is rubbing shoulders, debating, asking questions, understanding things, really not, I think a lot of leaders work on a too high level and is not involved in the detail. They're not really understanding the clients. If I take the way we built Capitec in the first 15 years was basically my first 12 years, my job was Tuesday mornings out in the field and coming back Thursday night, Friday morning, understanding the people in Transkei, understanding the people in Bosbok, Toando, traveling South Africa, understanding the clients, working with the clients, working with our consultants. Because out of that, you really understand needs, you understand the clients, and you understand what inspires people. So it's really working with people, but with a mindset to improve, a mindset to add value. I've said it many times, I've got a silly thing, even if I'm finished with a meeting or finished with a day, did I add value? What could I have done better? What can I improve on? So you need to have that internal drive to improve yourself on a continuous basis.
And Gerrie, I believe when you joined Capitec in 2000, you had about 10 staff, 850 clients. I mean, you've grown exponentially to more than 18 million clients. Looking back over the 23, almost 24 years, what are the best moments? What are maybe the magical moments, the turning points that you remember fondly?
Yeah, there's no big turning point. I think what is very important is our first 9 months, 8 to 9 months, we really debated and wrote our business plan. So we did a hell of a lot of planning and preparation. And we spent a lot of time on, what is our fundamentals? If I look at affordability, accessibility, simplicity, and service, is our fundamentals which we defined those days. And it was all about, I think, it's quite easy to formulate strategy. If you look ourselves and the other banks, strategies are pretty much the same. Service is digitalized, it's payments, but it's the execution of that strategies that makes the difference. Ability to make certain that 15,000 people that works for us understand that strategies and are executing those strategies. I think that is the biggest challenge. So if you look at our business model on the retail space, it was just executing it. I remember in our first business plan, we talked about 2 million clients, and then it became 5 million clients. And we're now 20 million clients. But we're still executing the same plan. And it's changed the fact that we brought in business banking, and it's changed that we brought in insurance. But it's still the same fundamentals of affordability, simplicity, service, and accessibility. Those are critical fundamentals that we've defined way back.
And Gerrie, you mentioned adding value, and I guess not just in business and banking. Can you tell us a little bit, what are your passions in life? What do you do when you're not at work?
Then I don't work.
Yeah.
Well, I think you need to have a passion. It's always for me, you need to balance life. And I know it's difficult to balance life because there's family, there's friends, there's your hobbies. I like mountain biking, and I like being outdoors. I like being in nature. And it's how do you balance that? And I think there's also a big opportunity to learn. You need to read. You need to rub shoulders with other leaders. You need to understand why other leaders are doing it. So reading and working with other leaders is also important. But I think you need to spend a certain amount of time on friends and family and religion and things like that. You can't just work, because then you become an imbalanced individual.
Right. And Gerrie, looking into the future, what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Well, I think firstly, people make leadership too complicated. People want to describe leadership as this magical thing, but in very simple ways is to take leadership is to explain to people the why. Because if you really explain the why, people understand what they need to go and do. Because then they understand what you're doing. And I think then also have the ability to ask questions and make certain that they understand it. It's for me like if you look at if you're autocratic or you're democratic, if you take situational leadership, you're going to move between those two. And I think there's times that you need to be autocratic. There's times that you need to be democratic. But you must always explain the why. And your typical autocrats that you don't like about is when they don't explain the why. So it's the leadership for me is all about the ability to explain the why. Because if you can explain the why and the person buys into the why, then a person will be inspired and they will do things. But if you can't in your own mind have a clear picture of that why, you're going to struggle. And it's the same with, you can have your vision and your dream, and then you need to bring it into objectives and strategies. But then you need to bring that strategies down into the smallest components so that people understand the why. because then they will implement. And if you don't do that, you're going to struggle. So I think a very big portion of leadership is also a little bit of be simplistic. In Capitec, we're very focused on being simplistic and transparent to make it as easy. If you look at, if somebody can take a very complex problem and explain it in a very simplistic manner, that person is in charge of that problem.
Right.
But if somebody takes a complex things and he can't explain it to you, then he's not really understanding the problem. And to unpack a complex problem, you need to ask questions and you need to go into the detail. And I think that's a problem and a challenge in South Africa, in worldwide as well. People don't go into that detail enough to bring you really to be able to explain the problem properly and then to formulate strategies from there.
Now, Gerrie, your motto at Capitec is simple and transparent. You're a leader in culture. I guess you're a leader in staff development. What is it we have to do more to develop future leaders in business, in society?
I think what we are sitting with is that a lot of people are specialists, and there's not a lot of people that understand how everything fits together. Because if you look at business, there's finance, there's HR, there's IT, etc., etc. And how does it all fit together? And then it comes back to the business acumen side, because that business acumen gives you the ability to understand how everything fits together and how do you prioritize to make the right calls. Because at the end of the day, it's the ability to make the right calls that, and it comes a little bit of business acumen, and business acumen is developing that gut feel to make the right calls. And all of that goes into the detail, understanding the detail of a business or what you're busy with. I think the challenges in life today is there's so much noise, social media, etc., etc. And what is the real truth and what is the real issues? We're not spending enough time on what is the real issues and the real problems. And then also understanding the clients, because with all this noise and everything happening, how do you really understand the client? What is the difference between a client sitting in Cape Town and a client sitting in Joburg and a client in Toronto? Because you need to be able to address the basic needs of clients if you want to be successful. Because any business, it all goes about the client, and delivering on the client's need is critical.
Now, Gerrie, these are challenging times, and I think you went through your own challenges at Capitec, especially during the COVID crisis. Can you maybe share a couple of insights how you tackled the crisis and your advice to future leaders? How should they go about tackling challenges in their career?
I think if we had the Viceroy challenge where Viceroy was attacking Capitec, and you had COVID. And in both those areas, you have to tackle a big problem or a big issue. And what I've learned in both of them is to say, but who's the 4 or 5 stakeholders that is going to be effective? If I look at COVID, you immediately ask, what's the impact on our clients? What's the impact on our staff? What's the impact on our branches, digital? What's the impact on our stakeholders? So if you break a problem down into 4 or 5 components, then you formulate strategies on those particular areas, because how it will affect the client, how it will affect a shareholder, how it will affect the media is completely different. And then you formulate your different strategies of it. We tend to take a problem and then we just want to go head on into a problem. But you need to think back, first analyze the problem, ask who's the stakeholders, who's going to be affected, and then really think about what is your strategy, what's your plan with those particular stakeholders. I think then it's also about being decisive, because if I look at with COVID, we went in March was when COVID happened. We said we had to rebudget. we said we're going to do it once, so we're going to cut hard and take decisive steps. I sat with my exco, we said, this is what we want to do, and we done it in that 3 months. So it was hard, quick, decisive steps. And then to say, okay, right, how do we reprioritize what we are busy with? And that's where we moved quite a lot of the business away from, let's call it branch focus, to digital focus, because we knew people is going to sit at home and they're going to transact digitally, etc., etc. So you had to make changes in your strategy to be able to compensate for that. I think it's also, you know, if you look at leadership, is don't be scared to make decisions. And if you make the wrong decision, just correct it as quickly as possible. Because COVID, you were so uncertain, nobody really knew where you're going. But I remember we made calls, and then we would evaluate the calls on a regular basis. And if it was the wrong call, we will correct it. And I think if you're in uncertain times, then it's communicate. People want to have that assurance. People want to understand what's happening. So yeah, make calls, be decisive. If it's wrong, correct it, and then communicate to your staff as much as possible.
And Gerrie, if you were to design a curriculum for future leaders, and you were to teach a skill or two to leaders of the future, what skill would that be?
I think the first skill would be the ability to ask questions, but ask questions on what the impact will be on the client end to end, because we tend to launch a product and then we ask what's the effect on this product on a client, but we don't look at the end to end impact. It's very few people that can ask the right questions and come to the right conclusions. And I'm talking really deep questions that challenge the team. So I've got a friend that says you ask questions, and if you're still uncertain, you still ask just one more question just to make certain you fully understand it. Right. It's quite amazing if you start, you know, people tend to very quickly say, I understand the subject or something. But then if somebody starts asking questions, you realize you haven't actually thought about it. And then the ability to understand that I haven't got a focus on just my department or my function, but what is the impact of my decisions and what am I doing in the business in totality? So that's that business acumen side, because it's quite easy if I sit in HR and I make an HR decision, but what is that HR effect going to be on all other departments? Because you need to think through it. What is the outcome of it? And then, you know, the old word about change management. I hate appointing change managers because I say it's the line manager's function to manage change. But if you want to manage change, you need to sit down and say, but we're changing this. What is the real impact of this on the business and all my people that's reporting on me, that I can go and sit with them and explain why are we doing the change, and B, the impact on you is going to be X, Y, Z. So I would say those three components is probably the biggest one. And I think probably the most important one is be positive. Because if you're not positive, you're in a negative frame of mind, you can't lead anyone. You're not going to find solutions. So you need to have energy, you need to have passion, you need to even, you know, I've made that statement before, you can go to Switzerland, everything works, there's no opportunities. Or come to South Africa, nothing works, but there's plenty of opportunities. So go and look for those opportunities, because there's everywhere there's an opportunity in a problem. You need to have that mindset. And I think you also need to have a mindset to think completely different. You bring in a product or a service or whatever, how are you 20-30% better than your competitor?
Well, Gerrie, this reminds me very much of the Socratic method of questioning. So maybe we can call you the Socrates of leadership.
No. It's just sticking to the basics.
Sorry?
I say it's just sticking to the basics. Be involved.
Okay, great. Gerrie, as a mentor to so many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader, and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, I think we've got one of our young black leaders in organization. He started as on a very junior level in the bank about 20 years ago. And yeah, just had a trick. And today he runs our call center. He's a business exec for our call centers. He's got an MBA. He's had his degrees. And we mentored him and developed him. And I still remember I said to him, because he was in the Transkei, and he said to me, he understands the business. And I said, you don't really understand the business, because your client base is much easier, rural based. Go to Joburg and you'll understand the demand of your Joburg client base. And he said to me, he's prepared to go. So he was prepared to go, and he learned a hell of a lot there. Yeah, I think we've got many stories like that in the bank, whereby we grew, develop people. You know, I always say, if you go into a job, there's 3 phases, or if whatever you do, there's 3 phases. The first one is, your first phase is you learn a job, or you learn something. The second phase is you put your stamp of approval on it, so you make the job or the function your own. And the third one is you develop somebody to take over from you so that you can move on. So if I can look at leadership, I think those 3 is important. And I think we too quickly, we don't do, especially in South Africa with EE, we don't do the first one strong enough. We're not doing the second one strong enough. And then if you don't do the first and the second, you can't really develop somebody else to take over from yourself. Because if you want to develop somebody to take over from yourself, you really need to do the first 2.
Right. And Gerrie, looking back over your leadership journey, are there any role models of leadership that you encountered and that future leaders should learn from?
I think, you know, if you look at leaders over the last 40, 50 years, you can go to Mandela, you can go to Steve Bezos, you can go to Bill Gates, you can Warren Buffett. You know, I don't think there's one particular leader. I think you need to have that mindset to whoever have done something great. You need to go and sit and see what that person has done. So there's not one leader that stands out for me. I tend to take bits and pieces everywhere and trying to put it together into something that works for me.
Right. And Gerrie, where can our listeners follow you and follow Capitec? Because it sounds very much there's many lessons in business and in life that we can all learn from.
Well,
you.
come and join us, come and work for us.
Okay.
No, you know, Capitec is, you know, we're a public company, so people, there's a lot of things that we are involved with. On the education front, we're involved with. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of things that we are, which is public domain. So people can follow us just following Capitec.
And it almost sounds like there's a Capitec way of life, because what you do in business, surely simplicity, transparency, and so on, you should also practice in your own life.
Well, you know, if I look at our culture, we've defined our culture. And firstly, culture for me is something that you make decisions without thinking. You do it automatically. And our culture is defined on really understanding the client needs. Then it's really understanding your people that works for you so that you can deliver. So it's that triangle of client, people, delivery onto the client needs. So that's the magic that you need to get right. You know, what is your culture? How do you operate? Because you want to create a company that can go 100, 200 years old. And the only way you can be successful in that is on the culture side.
And last but not least, Gerrie, if I may ask, what would you like to be remembered for?
I don't work for something that, you know, I want to be remembered for. I've got no, for me, I do things because I believe in it. I've got a passion for it. And it excites me. So I don't play for the pavilion, if you can call it that. I like what I'm doing. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and if we're successful, great. But it's. I always say you can't manage output. You must manage input, because you can't say I'm going to win a rugby match. It's your strategy, it's your players, all of that needs to get together so that you can go and win. So I focus on the input, not on the output.
Right. Well, Gerrie, thank you so much for making time to share your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and by leading by example. I mean, I believe Capitec was voted the best bank in the world, right?
Yeah,
not
that's
long
correct.
ago.
Yeah,
So,
it was 3 years in a row.
Wow. So yeah, many lessons to be learned. I hope there will be a book one day.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Gerrie.